Carla screamed, "Please, stop kicking me," as she crouched behind the counter, instinctively shielding her face with her arms. The man in the expensive suit kept moving toward her, his fury intensifying with every step. "You useless idiot! You ruined a $300 bottle of wine and ruined my shirt," he shouted. Inside the Green Valley restaurant, everything suddenly froze. Forks halted mid-air, conversations died mid-sentence, and every head turned toward the commotion at table 12. Roberto Mendez, a businessman infamous in the city for his real estate ventures, had completely lost control after Carla accidentally bumped his chair while serving another table. Carla Santos, 29, had been working at Green Valley for 3 years. She was the type of employee who clocked in early, stayed beyond her shift, and never complained about extra hours. A single mother raising a 7-year-old daughter, she had turned every workday into a chance to save money for the business degree she dreamed of earning. Yet now, crouched behind the counter in fear, she looked like nothing more than a vulnerable target. "People like you don't deserve to work in a respectable establishment," Roberto sneered, his voice vibrating through the dining room. "Go back to the slums where you belong." But what no one's attention landed on was the man seated in the corner. At table 23, a quiet figure wearing a simple shirt and worn jeans had observed the entire incident unfolding. His expression did not mirror the shock or outrage seen in the other diners. Instead, his eyes held a calm, calculating stillness, something found only in someone accustomed to studying and evaluating complicated situations. Fernando Silva, age 45, drove an old pickup truck. At least, that was the impression everyone in Green Valley had of him, since he had been dining there twice a week for half a year. He always ordered the same dish, always left a generous tip, and always treated the staff with genuine kindness. Carla had noticed how he paid attention to everything: the restaurant flow, how the workers operated, how customers behaved. "Is anyone going to step in, or will you all just stand there while this animal destroys someone's property?" Roberto yelled, pointing at Carla as she silently cried. That was when Fernando rose from his seat. Not abruptly or theatrically, just calmly standing, as though he were about to pay his bill. Yet something in his posture caused Roberto to pause his ranting for a moment. "Excuse me," Fernando said steadily as he walked over to table 12. His voice didn't carry anger, but it had a natural authority that quieted the room even further. "I believe there's been some sort of misunderstanding." Roberto turned to him with contempt. "And who the hell are you? Her boyfriend? This piece of what?" Fernando replied with an unshaken tone. "I'm simply someone who saw everything that happened." His eyes briefly met Carla's, and in that glance she recognized something. Not pity, not shock, something more like quiet acknowledgement. Fernando had been observing Roberto not just tonight, but for many weeks, and what he'd seen led him to make a choice that would completely alter the lives of everyone present in that room. As Roberto redirected his insults toward Fernando as well, Carla noticed something strange happening inside her. Despite the humiliation she was enduring, an unexpected calm began forming within her, as if this awful moment was the first step toward something far greater. If you're enjoying this story of unfairness and unexpected justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to discover how a single moment of humiliation would turn into the spark of a transformation no one would ever forget. "I told you to move out of my way," Roberto shouted, shoving Carla away from the table. "People like you don't understand courtesy. You only respond to force." The restaurant manager, Mr. Peterson, finally emerged, but the expression on his face showed far more eagerness to soothe Roberto than to stand up for his employee. "Mr. Mendez," he began, anxious and submissive, "please, let's handle this matter in a civilized way." Roberto let out a scornful, mocking laugh. "Civilized? This? This woman ruined a shirt that costs more than what she makes in an entire year, and you expect me to act civilized?" Carla stayed quiet, subtly brushing away the tears that refused to stop falling. This wasn't the first time she had endured racial humiliation at her workplace, but never had it been so public, so vicious, so openly cruel. Over the past few months, ever since Roberto became a frequent customer, she had been insulted repeatedly, called incompetent, lazy, and much uglier names when he assumed no one else could hear. What cut the deepest was remembering her daughter Isabella asking her just a week earlier why her mother always came home sad. How does someone explain to a 7-year-old child that there are people in the world who despise you simply for existing? "Do you know what the problem with you people is?" Roberto continued, now addressing the entire restaurant as if it were his personal stage. "You all think you deserve to be in respectable places without earning it. I built my empire from nothing, working 16-hour days for years." From his corner, Fernando observed every word, every movement, every reaction in the room. For the past 6 months, he had been quietly studying not only Roberto, but the entire dynamic of the restaurant. He knew Roberto's background, that he was the privileged son of a powerful politician, that he inherited his father's construction firm at 25, and that his supposed 16-hour workdays consisted mainly of long lunches and golf outings. Yet, what impressed Fernando most was Carla's reaction to each insult. She didn't yell, she didn't retaliate. She carried herself with a quiet dignity, the kind he had only ever seen in people who had endured far worse. There was something in her eyes that reminded him of his mother, who had spent years working as a maid to fund his education. "Do you know how much money I bring into this restaurant every month?" Roberto now snapped at Mr. Peterson, the manager. "I bring important clients here. I host corporate events here. And this useless employee is going to cost you more money than she could ever bring in." Carla felt something inside her fracture. It wasn't only the shame, it was the painful realization that she might lose the job she desperately depended on. Her daughter had recently begun asking why they couldn't afford the same school supplies as the other kids. And the health insurance the restaurant provided was the only medical coverage they had. "Mr. Peterson," she finally spoke, her voice shaking but steady, "I can pay for the shirt. You don't need to deduct it all from my salary at once. I can pay in installments." "You will pay," Roberto cut in sharply, "and you'll pay with interest for wasting my time." That was the moment Fernando reached his decision. It wasn't out of pity. He had spent months observing Carla, her skill, her work ethic, her respectful manner with every customer. She was exactly the type of person he loved having on his team. Roberto, on the other hand, embodied everything Fernando despised about the corporate world. "Excuse me," Fernando said again, more firmly this time. "Perhaps I can offer a solution." Roberto spun around, annoyed. "I've already told you, this isn't your concern. Who do you even think you are?" Fernando allowed himself a faint smile. It was a fair question. Who was he? Officially, Fernando Silva was the CEO of Silva Holdings, a company that had acquired over 200 businesses in the past 5 years. His strategy was always the same. Target places with strong potential but poor leadership or dysfunctional management. "I'm just someone who understands business," Fernando answered calmly. "And I can promise you, you're about to make an extremely expensive mistake." "Mistake?" Roberto barked a laugh. "The only mistake here is that this place hired people who don't know their place." Carla watched the tense exchange between the two men, her heart pounding, torn between fear and gratitude, not yet aware that everything about her life was seconds away from changing forever. Something about the way Fernando carried himself fascinated her. He spoke with a natural authority, the kind that came from someone used to being heard and respected. Yet, What struck her even more was the complete composure he maintained, as though everything happening in that chaotic moment was exactly what he had anticipated all along. "Mr. Mendius," Fernando continued, "let me ask you something. How much do you believe your reputation is worth?" Roberto's expression tightened, clearly thrown off by the sudden shift in the conversation. What he didn't realize was that Fernando had spent the past several weeks not only watching the restaurant's dynamics, but also carefully investigating the backgrounds of every troublesome regular who walked through those doors. And when it came to Roberto Mendez, Fernando had uncovered several fascinating pieces of information. Details that a man obsessed with his public image would never want to see exposed. With every insult Roberto hurled at Carla, Fernando felt something grow firmer inside him. A quiet determination fed by the injustice Roberto treated as normal. What Roberto didn't grasp was that every contemptuous word was essentially crafting his own downfall, and Fernando was moments away from teaching him the true definition of power. "My reputation?" Roberto barked out a loud laugh, drawing even more attention from the diners. "My reputation is untouchable. I belong to the most elite club in the city. I own 3 businesses, and I have connections these—" He gestured dismissively toward the staff and customers. "People wouldn't even dare to dream of." Fernando nodded slowly, as if taking every brag seriously. "Interesting. And all of these accomplishments were achieved solely by your own hard work, correct?" "Of course," Roberto snapped. "Unlike people like her, I actually put in the effort to get where I am." Carla watched the exchange with deepening interest. There was something in Fernando's tone that reminded her of the documentaries she had watched with her daughter Isabella about master negotiators. Each question he asked seemed crafted with purpose, guiding Roberto somewhere deliberate. "Mr. Peterson," Roberto barked, turning toward the manager, "I want that employee fired right now, and if she's not gone immediately, I'll pull all my corporate accounts from this establishment." The manager swallowed hard. Roberto really did bring considerable income through his business lunches and events. "Mr. Mendes, maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone." "The only solution," Roberto slammed his fist on the table, "is for her to leave. People like her need to understand that incompetence has consequences." Carla felt her entire world collapse in that moment. Losing this job would mean she couldn't cover next month's rent. Isabella would be forced to switch schools again. Every dream she had of studying business and building a better life for her daughter evaporated before her eyes. And that was when Fernando made a move no one expected. He calmly pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Excuse me, I need to make a quick call," he said. "Hi, Amanda, it's me. I need you to contact our legal team. Yes, immediately. We have a situation that requires urgent attention." His tone was gentle, but carried a firm authority that made every person in the restaurant stop and listen. Roberto frowned, irritated. "What is this? Are you going to stay on the phone while I deal with my issue?" Fernando ended the call and looked directly at him. "Actually, your issue is about to become much bigger than you think." Carla noticed a distinct shift in Fernando's posture, his relaxed confidence transforming into something sharper, more businesslike. He turned to her and spoke in a completely respectful tone, unlike the one he used with Roberto. "Carla, could you do me a favor? I need you to write down everything that happened here, time, place, who witnessed it, and exactly what was said. Can you do that?" She nodded, confused but curious. "Yes, but why?" Fernando gave a slow, deliberate smile that instantly made Roberto uneasy. Roberto let out a dismissive laugh at the idea of being civilized. "Civilized? Are you serious?" he scoffed. "This woman ruined a shirt that costs more than she makes in an entire year, and you expect me to act civil?" Carla stayed quiet, subtly brushing away the tears that continued to roll down her cheeks. This was far from the first time she had endured racist humiliation at work, but never before had it been so public, so vicious, so openly degrading. Over the past few months, ever since Roberto had begun frequenting the restaurant, he had hurled insults at her, calling her incompetent, lazy, and even worse names he assumed no one else could hear. The memory that stabbed her the deepest was of her daughter Isabella asking her just a week earlier why Mommy always comes home sad from work. How do you explain to a 7-year-old child that some people look at you with hatred simply because you exist? You want to know the real problem with you people? Roberto continued, now addressing the entire restaurant as though he were delivering a speech. You all think you deserve to be in decent places without earning it. I built my empire with my own hands, working 16 hours a day for years. Fernando took in every word, every gesture, every reaction in the room. For the past 6 months, he had been quietly studying Roberto, not only observing him in the restaurant, but analyzing the ecosystem surrounding him. He knew Roberto was the son of a powerful politician, that he had inherited his father's construction company at 25, and that his so-called 16-hour workdays largely consisted of lavish business lunches and afternoons spent on golf courses. Yet what struck Fernando most was how Carla responded to each insult. She never retaliated, she didn't raise her voice or lash out. Instead, she held herself with the kind of quiet dignity he had only ever seen in people who had survived much harsher realities. There was something in her eyes that reminded him of his own mother, who had worked as a housekeeper for decades so he could study. Do you realize how much money I bring into this establishment every month? Roberto shouted now at Mr. Peterson. I bring in VIP clients. I host corporate events here. And this incompetent woman is going to cost you more than she could ever produce. Carla felt something inside her shatter. It wasn't just the humiliation. It was the sinking certainty that she was about to lose the job she desperately depended on. Isabella was already beginning to ask why they couldn't buy the same school supplies as the other kids. The restaurant's health insurance was the only medical coverage they had. Mr. Peterson, Carla finally whispered, her voice trembling yet steady, I can pay for the shirt. You don't have to deduct it all at once. I can pay it in installments. You will pay, Roberto cut in sharply, and you'll pay extra for wasting my time. That was the moment Fernando made up his mind. Not because he pitied Carla. Over months he had seen her professionalism, her commitment, her respectful attitude with every customer. She was exactly the type of person he liked working with. But Roberto embodied everything Fernando despised in the corporate world. Excuse me, Fernando said again, louder this time. May I propose a solution? Roberto spun around, irritated. I already said this has nothing to do with you. Who do you think you are? Fernando gave a faint, almost amused smile. It was a fair question. Who was he? In truth, Fernando Silva was the CEO of Silva Holdings, a company that had acquired over 200 businesses in the last 5 years. His acquisitions followed a precise formula: establishments with promise, but plagued by poor management or toxic leadership. I'm simply someone who knows a thing or two about business, Fernando answered steadily. And I can assure you that you are seconds away from making a very expensive mistake. Mistake? Roberto barked. The only mistake here is hiring someone who doesn't know her place. Carla watched the exchange, her gratitude mixed with a nervous uncertainty, unsure of what Fernando intended to do next. There was a quality in Fernando's voice that made Roberto pause. An unmistakable confidence sharply contrasting with the modesty he had displayed during the months he frequented the restaurant. Carla noticed that several of the employees had stopped what they were doing and were now observing the unfolding confrontation. Some customers had even pulled out their phones, recording or photographing the situation as the tension in the room thickened. "Amanda," Fernando said evenly, "could you clarify for Mr. Mendez what our preliminary review uncovered regarding his business conduct?" At that instant, Roberto began to sense that he might have severely underestimated what was happening, and Carla, watching the shifting balance of power play out before her, felt, for the first time in months, that justice might not be just a theoretical concept after all. What neither she nor Roberto realized was that Fernando had spent the past several weeks not only gathering proof against Roberto, but also creating opportunities for people like her. The strategy he was about to reveal would reshape not only their futures, but the fate of the entire community connected to them. Under the weight of dozens of increasingly hostile stares, Roberto slowly understood that his arrogance had led him into territory far more dangerous than a simple argument with a staff member. He was about to deal with consequences his privilege had never equipped him to face. "Amanda," Fernando repeated calmly, "would you show Mr. Mendez the documentation related to his labor practices from the past 2 years?" Amanda opened her folder and displayed several photographs along with official paperwork. 7 confirmed racial discrimination complaints from the Ministry of Labor. 16 black employees dismissed without cause after reporting harassment. 3 ongoing lawsuits addressing systematic pay disparities tied to race. Roberto let out a shaky laugh. Those are misunderstandings, routine administrative issues in any big corporation." Amanda calmly presented another set of documents. "And this," she said, "details the bids you secured using insider information from your father, Councilman Mendez, as well as 2 municipal projects wrongly attributed to your company while you were enjoying a vacation in France." Roberto's complexion paled. Who exactly are you?" Fernando smiled for the first time that evening. "Fernando Silva, CEO of Silva Holdings. Perhaps the name is familiar. We specialize in purchasing companies with managerial dysfunction and transforming them into ethical, profitable operations." The entire restaurant fell into a stunned silence. Carla felt as though she were witnessing a scene from a film, struggling to absorb everything taking place. "You know," Fernando continued, turning to address everyone present as if they were an audience, "I have spent the last 6 months coming here, not merely as a customer, but as someone evaluating this restaurant for a potential acquisition. And you know what I learned?" Roberto attempted to interrupt, but Fernando raised his hand calmly. "I learned that the most hard-working, capable, and respectful employee in this establishment has been consistently demeaned by a man who mistakes inherited privilege for genuine merit." Amanda then retrieved a tablet from her briefcase. "Mr. Mendez, would you care to see the compilation we assembled over the last 60 days? Every insult, every racist remark, every display of arrogance has been fully documented." The tablet screen lit up with footage of Roberto on various days, shouting at black employees, sneering at them, making demeaning comments and treating white patrons with markedly different courtesy. The audio was crystal clear, the dates visible, and the camera angles unmistakably incriminating. This is a violation of privacy," Roberto stuttered. "Actually," Fernando replied with composed firmness, "the law states that recordings in public areas are permissible, and our legal team verified that all evidence was gathered within legal boundaries." Carla watched as Roberto visibly fell apart. The same man who minutes earlier had spoken to her as if she were beneath him was now sweating, trembling, fully grasping the gravity of the situation. "Carla," Fernando said, turning to her now. Carla blinked, still trying to process what Fernando meant before asking, confused, "What do you mean?" Fernando kept his calm demeanor as he explained. "Silva Holdings is purchasing this restaurant, and I'm offering you a 35% partnership so you can run the complete transformation of this place." Mr. Peterson, who had remained silent during most of the confrontation, suddenly stepped forward in protest. "Mr. Silva, I never approved any sale." Amanda, however, smiled politely before responding. "Your outstanding debt with the bank was bought by our company 3 weeks ago. Legally, the establishment already belongs to us. We're simply finalizing the transition." Roberto erupted with fury. "This is a setup. You orchestrated all of this just to humiliate me." "No," Fernando corrected him with an icy calmness. "We arranged everything to ensure justice is done. The humiliation was only the natural consequence of your own actions." Amanda produced more papers from her briefcase. "Mr. Mendes, our investigation also found your gambling debts. $180,000 spent on online casinos in the last 6 months. Funds taken directly from your construction company's payroll." Roberto staggered backward. "How? How could you possibly know that?" Fernando answered with devastating clarity. "When you make it a habit to crush the dignity of working people, eventually you come across someone who has the means to uncover exactly who you are." Carla finally found her voice, shaken but sincere. You did all this for me?" Fernando responded honestly. "Not only for you, for everyone who quietly suffers while privileged mediocrity misuses the power it never truly earned." Roberto made a final desperate threat. "My father will hear about this. He has connections everywhere." "Your father," Amanda interrupted calmly, "received a complete report on your illegal activities an hour ago. He is already preparing a public statement distancing himself from you to protect his political career." Roberto's face crumpled in devastation. In mere minutes, he had lost his business, the support of his family, his good name, and every illusion of power he had clung to. Fernando stepped closer and asked quietly, "Do you know the difference between us, Roberto? You were born on top and used that height to push others down. I built my success by raising up capable people, no matter where they came from." Fernando then turned to Carla. "Do you accept the offer to turn this place into something that truly honors hardworking people like you?" Tears filling her eyes, Carla nodded. "Yes, I accept." "Excellent," Fernando replied. "Amanda, prepare the contracts. And Mr. Mendes," he added, looking at Roberto one last time, "I recommend you spend the upcoming months learning humility. You will need it." Roberto stumbled out of the restaurant, leaving behind not only his shattered pride, but also the harsh realization that he had gravely underestimated the strength of those he considered beneath him. The customers around them began applauding spontaneously. Carla, still trying to grasp the magnitude of the shift in her life, understood she had just seen not only justice take place, but also a profound demonstration that true power recognizes and uplifts competence regardless of origin. Yet the most significant change was still ahead, one that would transform not just her life but the entire community connected to that small restaurant that was now destined to become far more meaningful than anyone had ever imagined. 6 months later, Carla straightened her new blazer as she observed the lively atmosphere inside what had become the Green Valley Community Restaurant and Training Center. The establishment had evolved into much more than a dining spot. It was now a professional training hub where young people from the neighborhood learned cooking and management skills. "Mom, can I help check the online orders?" Isabella asked while sitting at a nearby table, finishing homework from the private school she now attended. "Of course, sweetheart," Carla replied with pride, still adjusting to her new life. As a managing partner, she earned in 1 month what once took her 6 months to make. But what filled her heart the most was watching Roberto's former employees now working with dignity, earning fair salaries and enjoying real opportunities to grow. Fernando walked in carrying a pile of certificates. Another 12 participants completed the training this week. 3 have already secured jobs at different restaurants within the chain. Carla's transformation had been nothing short of remarkable. She had uncovered a natural talent for leadership and business management that surprised even Fernando himself. In just a few months, she had created customer service procedures, organized training systems, and even developed a selection of dishes that became well known throughout the city. "And what's happening with Roberto now?" Carla asked, more curious than vengeful. "His construction company finally went bankrupt last week," Fernando answered in his usual calm tone. "All the former employees were either transferred to other companies or compensated fairly. As for Roberto, he's currently working as a salesman at a building materials store." Roberto's downfall had been total and irreversible. Investigations uncovered not only consistent racial discrimination but also tax fraud, illegal labor practices, and active corruption. His father-in-law had publicly separated himself from Roberto's actions. His old associates from the elite club pretended he didn't exist anymore, and his wife filed for divorce, taking half of what was left of his assets. What hurt Roberto the most was realizing that nobody pitied him. The very workers he had belittled were now prospering in better jobs while he faced, for the first time in his life, the reality of earning an honest wage. "You know," Carla said as she observed the constant activity inside the restaurant, "a year ago, all I wanted was for him to treat me with respect. Today, I've learned that people like Roberto never change. They only stop harming others when they lose the power to do so." Fernando nodded. The greatest revenge is not destroying someone out of spite. It's building something so extraordinary that the person becomes insignificant. Isabella lifted her head from her homework. "Mom, my teacher said you're going to speak at school about women entrepreneurs." "Yes," Carla replied with a proud smile, remembering the woman she had been 6 months earlier crying behind the counter. "I'll tell the children that no matter where you are born or what color you are, character and competence always win in the end." Green Valley had become a symbol of progress in the city. Politicians visited the establishment to learn from the social initiative. Business owners wanted to duplicate the model, and the local community finally had a place where dignity and opportunity existed side by side. Roberto, meanwhile, was discovering every day what it felt like to be treated simply as another worker. No advantages, no family influence, no special treatment. For the first time, he was learning the true meaning of hard work and respect earned through ability instead of status. "There's something that always makes me wonder," Isabella commented. "Why are some people born thinking they're better than everyone else?" Carla reflected deeply before answering. "Because they confuse privilege with merit, my love. They believe they were blessed because they were extraordinary, when really they were extraordinary simply because they were blessed." Fernando listened to the mother-daughter conversation with a satisfied smile. Throughout his career, he had invested in many companies, but he had never witnessed a transformation as complete as Carla's. She hadn't merely learned to run a business, she had become a leader who inspired others to discover their own strength. "The most important thing," Carla continued, "is that when you achieve something through your own hard work, no one can ever take it away from you. Roberto lost everything because he never truly possessed anything. Everything he had was borrowed from his family, borrowed from privilege, borrowed from luck." As the sun dipped behind the rooftops of Green Valley, Carla took in the sight of families sharing meals, employees performing their duties with pride, and young trainees practicing skills that would shape their futures. She had turned humiliation into a mission, injustice into opportunity. Roberto had tried to ruin a hardworking, capable woman, but ultimately exposed only his own mediocrity. Real justice was not seeing him fall, It was building something so meaningful that his cruelty became nothing more than a tiny obstacle on the path to something far greater. And if this story of resilience and justice touched your heart, make sure to subscribe for more narratives that prove the greatest revenge will always be your own success.